Hello everybody, my name is Patrick, and today I will be showing you my term project for MATLAB. My term project is a trivia game that I designed to have a Arduino interface and a GUI. Let's get right into that. So, the first thing I had to do was to create the GUI itself. This program right here is Guide, and Guide is a toolbox in MATLAB which allows you to make GUIs. All I had to do was add a bunch of text boxes, which you can see are here. How I have like uh, player score, player two. These aren't edited. The ones that are edited are the ones that say boxes, and these right here. These will be used to display arrows, like with point, so the player can point which question they want. This will be the question box. This will be like a general display box. Scores will be shown here, and correct answers will be shown here. So once you run this, it creates a MATLAB file corresponding um, to this GUI. And this is my main MATLAB file for this project. This is predefined functions that initialize the text boxes in just the GUI, makes it run, and then here's where my code that I've written that starts. So first thing I did is I made an Arduino variable, which is MATLAB has some pretty understandable and not too difficult interfacing with Arduino. Um, all the functions were available on the MATLAB website. So I have like I'm configuring pins for digital inputs and digital outputs. So the digital outputs are LEDs and the digital inputs are buttons. I have 4 buttons and 6 LEDs, 2 buttons and 3 LEDs for each player. I'll explain what those are for when I show you my Arduino breadboard setup. So this is the first while loop. The first while loop is for keeping the player in a menu which will ask them if they want to play again, setting different variables here. So like I have like score variables, and this is the set function. The set function takes handles dot score one, and score one, just using this one as an example, uh, you set the text boxes in the GUI to have tags, and the tags help you or just what allow you to say, hey, I want to change this text box to whatever in the heck I want it to be. So like this one in particular is updating the score. So when you get all the way to the bottom of this code and a score change happens, it'll come back to this while loop. Well, this actually resets them to 0 because it's outside of the game. This while loop is inside of the game. This is like setting the correct answer boxes back to blank so you don't see the correct answer. This is my first user-defined function. This is the question selector because I have 100 questions. So I made one of my first user-defined functions to uh, select the question. So this is the question selector. It's repeat equals 1, while repeat equals 1. Question number is a random integer 1 through 100. For 1 through I equals 1 through 100, and the variable use questions is passed. Use questions is going to be a 100 element array that checks the random number to every single number in this list, and if it matches one of the numbers, it sets it back to 1 and it runs through it again. Once it finds a random number that is appropriate that hasn't been used already, it'll return it as question number. So when it returns question number, it puts it in the question database predefined function that I made. The question database is, as it sounds, it is a predefined function that has every single question that I have come up with. It is a switch based off a question number, which is the one parameter that this function needs, and as 1 through 100, it has a question variable for each case, an answer 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the correct answer as a number instead of a string. So it makes it easier to compare. And then the variables that it sends back are every single one of these. So I can just and I'll display how this functions here. So what it does right here is once it has the variables, it sets them in the appropriate text boxes. So each tag is the dot handles, and then it acting like a trivia game. So ready, 3, 2, 1, go, and it turns on LEDs. So my final user-defined function is the function flash. The way it works is I'm using the Arduino function write digital pin, and the function requires a Arduino input variable, the pin name, and what you want to set it to, a 1 or a 0. So having it turn the LED on or off every 0.15 seconds. So all I have to do is in my code, setting having it like this, where I just have it write 0, 1 every single time, I can just say flash Arduino variable and then whatever pin I want it to flash. So I have a turn to variable where if the person gets it right, it sets it equal to 1. If it adds 1 rather, and then if two players get it wrong, it adds 0.5 each time, so it equals 1. So it's an easy way to only allow each player to only have one turn, which is how I want my trivia game to function, because if you both get it wrong, next question. So, what's happening in this turn 2 while loop here is it first has this while loop with the buzzer. There's parse the buzzer buttons, see who hits the buzzer first. They get the answer first. So it changes the player turn switch down here to either 1 or 2, depending on if it's player 1 or player 2. So inside of the player turn switch, there is a while loop that is reading both the corresponding player's buzzer buttons or the question selector buttons. So if it detects that the buzzer is pressed again, it submits whatever the answer is at the time. There is a switch for the question buttons that every time you press it, it adds select +1, and then it won't go over 4, and it goes back down to 1, so you can parse through 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. If the player answer is correct, it adds turn 2 +1, like I explained previously, but if it's wrong, it adds 0.5. Depending on what turn 2 is, if turn 2 is 0, which means it's the first turn, then you get 4 points. But if turn 2 is 0.5, then it adds 3 points to your score. And it's the same thing for the second player as well, just except for the fact that at the end, if turn 2 is not greater than 1, then it'll change the switch to player 2 or player 1. If one of the players gets it correct after turn 1 or turn 2, it'll display correct, and it'll just blow through this code right here, and then it will go to the next question. If neither one of them get it right, this if and switch takes place, and it will display the correct answer. Switch correct answer, so it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Pauses for a couple seconds, and then it goes to the bottom of the loop, the game loop, and it sets whatever question it was on to the question array, so it doesn't pick the same question, and then it adds a question to the question counter, which is used to put each question just in the next place of the use questions variable. And then it checks here to see if you've won, and if you win, breaks out of the win loop, and you go into the quit loop, which it'll come up with a very similar, almost exactly the same as the question answer control structure, where you just parse the parse all the buttons, and if either player decides to quit or replay, it'll either break out of the loop or keep going. So let me switch to my phone here. Alright, so this is my Arduino breadboard MATLAB interface. So what I have is I have 3 LEDs and 2 buttons for each player. So the significance of the LEDs is the white LEDs, they signify that it's time to hit the button, and whoever hits their button first, their LED will stay lit, and the person who didn't hit the button fast enough, their LED will turn off. And then the red LED flashes when a player gets it wrong, and the green flashes when they get it right. Well, the way that I have this set up is in my code, I'm setting the button pins to digital inputs, and then the LEDs to digital outputs. And I have the buttons wired from power on the Arduino to the buttons, and then the buttons have their outputs connected to back to the Arduino pin, and so you don't flood or overload the digital input, you have the drop down resistor going to the ground. And it's similar with the LEDs where you have the um, the digital output pins connected to the LED, and then the drop down resistor to going to ground. All right, so now it's time to run my code. It'll be I'll have to go through all the possible combinations to demonstrate that this works, but I'll do my best. All right, so this is the dialog box. So you have ready, and this is what it does. So now it says go. Both of the white LEDs light up. This just signifies that hey, time to hit your buzzer. So I'll go ahead and hit player one's buzzer. The buzzer is on the right side, and the question selector is on the left. So if I hit player one's buzzer, light flashes, and the other one turns out. So now I have the opportunity to answer the question. So the question is as follows. Player one will get this right. So if I have player one get it right, the green LED flashes, and it adds 4 to player one's score. Lights flash again, so now player 2 will hit his buzzer first this time. And then I go ahead and parse through all the answers to this question. Pretty sure the answer to this one is Pittsburgh, isn't it? Yep, player 4 gets 4 points. And next question. So now player 1's going to get this one wrong. Oh no. Alright. So it's player 1's turn. So I'm pretty sure the answer is lamb. So I'm going to say donkey. Wrong. LED light flashes. So then I continue parsing. It's lamb. Right. So player 2 gets 3 points instead of 4. And I'll do it again for player 1. Player 1. Oh shoot, I didn't do that right. Answer to this one is 48. Alright, so let me try that again. Alright, so now it's player 2 gets it wrong. Magenta is the correct answer, so I'm going to say indigo. Oh, player 1's turn again. So then I will press that button, and I press the buzzer button, and it's correct. Alright, so player 1's been putting a big beat down on player 2, alright? It's 46 to 10. So ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, hit it fast this time. Alright. So, newborns. Respiration, huh? Correct. Alright, 50. Yay! Player 1 wins. Would you like to play again? So, both the buttons work for this. So, you see I could hit this button switcher, and then this button switcher, and then I'll just say replay. But it works. Okay. So that's how that works. If I would have hit quit, then it would have quit.